Ask everyone to engage in a little thought experiment. Imagine 1970 in our country when there is no Endangered Species Act, there's no Clean Water Act, there's no National Environmental Policy Act. We take these things for granted. I know I do. Every project that we conceive of or can see or think there might be an impact has some kind of environmental assessment these days. But it wasn't always that way. We've come a long way, and now consider that in our watershed, the Yuba watershed, there are major hydropower projects that are operating under rules and conditions that date back to the 1960s that have not been subject to those environmental laws that we somehow take for granted. But they are becoming subject to those environmental laws now. And I'm going to tell you the story of our work, and this is a big we here, but it's a circle's night, so I'll tell you somewhat from my personal standpoint and our organization's work to apply environmental science and our community values about environmental resources to the updating of those licenses which govern the operation of those dams in this watershed. And this is truly a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to improve the conditions of the Yuba River and restore this watershed. So let me go the right direction here. Okay. So this map, which you can look at later this evening if you care to, in better color, is an illustration of the hydrologic impacts to our watershed from the major dams and diversions in the Yuba watershed. There are more than 15 fairly large dams, and the yellow lines represent the major diversions. The width of the yellow line represents the relative amount of water. It's a 10-year averaging of water flow in the Yuba. And you can see by comparing the width of the yellow lines and the width of the blue lines in the river channels that the majority of water from certain portions of our watershed is diverted out of the river channel. And that is a big impact that I'll talk about in some detail. But I always have problems with this one. Yeah, there we go, the main, okay. Yeah, so in the upper middle Yuba and South Yuba, there is a complex of dams that diverts the majority of water from those watersheds south to the Bear River, principally through the Drum Canal. And just another example is New Bullard's Bar, the Colgate powerhouse takes the vast majority of water out of the lower North Yuba River and bypasses this incredible canyon that we now refer to as Rice's Crossing area. It's been a rough time if you're a native, sensitive, aquatic organism living in the Yuba watershed. Take, for example, the foothill yellow-legged frog, which in every stage of its life depends upon the river. The eggs are laid in the river between cobbles, usually in shallow water. And if the river drops more than a few centimeters a day over a number of days, those eggs in the springtime will be desiccated. Obviously, other rapid flow fluctuations can have impacts on the tadpoles of this amazing native organism. Some of our insects, like these caddisfly, are very sensitive to flow perturbations. And the cottonwood trees that grow along the riverbank are also dependent upon a very natural spring recession of flow. The types of changes from dams and diversions have had serious impacts on our native biota along the river, in and along the river. Trout populations are not what they would be in the middle Yuba, the South Yuba, anywhere where trout live in the watershed. The populations are down, not only because of the flow-related effects, but dams block gravel. Gravel is important for spawning, and Reservoirs usually trap wood. Wood is a key element of habitat in our river channels. So there are many, many ways in which dams and diversions impact habitat for native organisms. Here's one example looking at a hydrograph from each of the three forks of the Yuba River. You can see if you focus on just the right half of the chart. This is winter, lots of different flows up and down. But from the spring into the summer, the North Fork in green here represents kind of a typical gradual recession of the level of the river. Whereas in the South Yuba and the Middle Yuba, you see there's precipitous decline. Just over, a few days, the river is dropping almost a meter in height, and that can be quite detrimental to organisms that depend and have evolved to reproduce and recruit their young in this time of gradual recession. So that's one particularly sensitive area that we're working to restore natural river function. And there are many things that can result from dam relicensing, not just the restoration of a more natural flow regime, but upgrades to recreational facilities that may need upgrades because of current public uses and demands, a variety of fish and wildlife protections, fish passage requirements are possible through dam relicensing, and lots of important ecological monitoring and consultation can occur as a result of dam relicensing. It's a long process. These projects I'm going to tell you about, the relicensing is going to span at least 10 years for each of these. And they're going to be well over 1,000 meetings for each of the hydropower projects relicensing. And I guess that's what goes along with having a lot of environmental regulations that we're trying to apply to projects that date back to the hydraulic mining era in their current form. So more about dam relicensing. It's administered by the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, FERC, and it's for hydropower dams. Not all dams have a FERC license, only those dams that are generating hydroelectricity. Who is involved in relicensing? Well, of course, FERC, and then the owners of the hydropower projects are the licensees, and in this watershed, it's the Yuba County Water Agency, Nevada Irrigation District, and PG&E. They typically have consultants to help them conduct the many scientific studies that are required and to convene the meetings and the processes. Resource agencies play an extremely important role in this process, and I've listed them here with some notation to some special authorities that each of them have, or some of them have, through the Federal Power Act. The most important authority being what's called reservation authority. If the land is actually owned by the Forest Service or the BLM, then they can, and when they can rationalize it, mandate certain conditions in the new license. And we have friends from the Forest Service here with us tonight, and they're doing amazing work in this process. Lots of non-governmental organizations. This is the next sphere out of our circle is the WE, is our coalition of conservation groups engaged in these relicensing processes. And this is done at a regional and a national level as well. The California Hydropower Reform Coalition makes concerted effort to remind politicians and industry that there is no green hydropower, that dams, rivers, unless perhaps it's taking every effort to minimize and where possible restore healthy rivers. So how can relicensing restore salmon and steelhead in our watershed? Well, improving flows is first and foremost the most important thing to allowing there to be a habitat for salmon and steelhead, particularly in the upper watershed where so much of the flow is diverted. But also in the lower Yuba River, there are opportunities for enhancing the flow that could benefit salmon and steelhead populations. Habitat needs to be restored. Just restoring flow can improve riparian conditions, but The provision of gravel and wood below dams is also very, very important. Englebright Dam is not a FERC dam, so there will not be a fish passage requirement on FERC, but it is used and useful to a hydropower project, and so we do advocate for fish passage even in this relicensing process for Englebright. I want to get into the 3 hydropower projects in our watershed in just a little bit of detail. The first one being highlighted in yellow. The Yuba Bear project is owned by Nevada Irrigation District, and the largest dams are Jackson Meadows. There's a diversion dam, Milton Dam. These are on the Middle Yuba. Bowman Reservoir has Bowman Dam on Canyon Creek, and there's a series of dams above it. And then that diverts water to Spaulding. NID's project in totality, which includes other impoundments on the Bear River, 79 megawatts. Highlighted in green is PG&E's Drum Spaulding hydro power project, which is another complex of many dams. There are more than 15, actually there's 29 reservoirs, 12 powerhouses, including many on the Bear River. It's a 190 megawatt power project. These 2 projects are so intertwined that they're undergoing relicensing together, even though they're 2 separate FERC projects by number. They're going through the relicensing process together. And it is important to keep in mind that they were built not as hydropower projects from scratch. They utilize a lot of existing infrastructure, dams and canals from the hydraulic mining era dating back to 1880. So there's lots of opportunity for upgrades, shall we say. At this point in this relicensing, which has been underway for 8 years, lots has been accomplished by way of agreement. And this is truly worth celebrating. And I personally give thanks to Nevada Irrigation District and everyone who has contributed. But of course, the licensee has the most at stake in these processes. And to put water back into the river is to not have it available for their other uses. And so there's a real cost to what I'm going to, quickly, or what I have listed out up here. But we're grateful for that because it is a huge accomplishment when it comes to restoring the river. Higher minimum in-stream flows below the dams, and not just one in-stream flow, but flows that are adjusted to water year type. Drier is less water, but even in drier years, we have more water below the dams than we do in any year under minimum in-stream flow conditions currently. And then I'll talk about spill cessation controls or rules below dams. Lots of attention being paid to the health of our river through aquatic monitoring and consultation about that. Lots of new stream gauging and public reporting of the information about our rivers. And then millions of dollars of recreational improvements, including $90,000 for the BLM to take care of our state park, or our South Yuba land that BLM has been doing the best they can with little money, but they're going to get some help now through the relicensing. I talked about higher minimum in-stream flows. This table is right out of the final environmental document for, and refers to Spaulding Dam, which has had a minimum in-stream flow requirement to the South Yuba River below Spaulding Dam of 5 cubic feet per second. That's been the way it's been for more than 50 years. And 5 cubic feet per second is basically 5 garden hoses. And that's what's coming out of Spaulding Reservoir. Nothing more is required to be released at any time of the year. And of course, more is if the dam is spilling. But once the dam's not spilling, 5 CFS is all we've ever seen coming out of the south into the South Yuba River. Well, under the new agreed upon rules, we'll have at least 20 CFS, and that is in the driest of all years. This just shows critically dry years, and below normal water years. And the flows actually range up to 50 CFS. There's a supplemental flow measure that can be applied during these dry summers to keep the river healthy with a little extra boost of cold water. And so the minimum in-stream flows are going up to at least 20, and in some cases as high as 90 CFS in those wetter years. A massive improvement for the water in the South Yuba River, the flow. Thank you. Yeah, and lots of people worked on that, and we are many years away from seeing it in the river, unfortunately. Like I warned you, it's a long process, but we will keep you updated. Want to give you a heads up to the river is going to get a little cooler, but let me tell you how. This is Spaulding Dam where the water is released, and this is like Washington up here. And in red is what we see in the river now. This is a typical July. And the river warms real rapidly as it flows from the dam down to Washington. And then it's already warm, and as we know, stays nice and warm throughout the whole South Yuba, the whole wild and scenic section of South Yuba. What we're going to see is the green line, typically. And the river's still going to warm real rapidly, but notice that in this about 10-mile area around Washington, mostly above Washington, it's going to be 3 degrees Celsius, 10 degrees Fahrenheit cooler, and that makes a difference between a marginal trout fishery and an awesome trout fishery. So the South Yuba River, I expect, will become a trophy trout stream, and buy your bungalow in Washington now, because it's going to change up there. Yeah. But notice, swimmers, it's only going to be 1 degree cooler down at Purdon, and Edwards to Purdon and the whole bit where we love to go. So you can handle it, right? It'll be worth it. Okay. Yeah, I like it a little colder. One other example of a major change for the health of the river is what we call these spill cessation rules that are going to go into effect. The way the dams have been operated are to store water, to maximize the storage of water for the use of that stored water. And so when they have a wet spring and the dams are spilling, they time it to raise the spill gates. Here's some spill gates right here. This is not Spaulding, but the point is when they think they can continue storing all the inflow to the reservoir, up come the spill gates and the river flow just drops. Well, that's not going to happen like that anymore. Instead of what you see in the red line here is a precipitous decline over just a few days. There's going to be a more gradual decline, as shown in the blue, over a series of weeks, really. And that will make the difference between killing all frog eggs or allowing them to live, or allowing riparian trees to recruit seedlings or not. And it'll also mean a lot more whitewater boating days for those who love to play on the South Yuba River in this form of recreation. So everybody benefits, and again, we're really grateful to NID and PG&E for adjusting to this incredible field of environmental science that allows us to understand what the river needs and to bring it into this negotiation for the new licenses.
The last 2 slides,
Mm-hmm.
is that running this year?
No, no. These agreed upon measures still have to go through some of the remaining dam relicensing process, and I'll give you a sense of how long it's going to take. Unfortunately, it could take several years still. Yeah. But, one thing I didn't say, I'm sorry, is that those minimum in-stream flows, it seems like a lot more water, 20, 30 CFS instead of 5. It is based on the best available hydrological science, a lot of monitoring. that water should be there even in our prolonged droughts of the future. So, we all know water scarcity is real, but we're confident that we can have that amount of water even in our dry years into the future. So there is a process remaining for getting to those outcomes. One is the Endangered Species Act. We do want there to be a consultation regarding the impact of the diversions still remain, and there's an impact to salmon and steelhead in the watershed, and so that needs that process needs to play out. And there's also a process with the State Water Board to certify these projects under the Clean Water Act. I have here remaining process. We think because NID is a good steward of the watershed, and we invite PG&E to as well, that some of the low-cost, high-benefit, agreed-upon measures could be implemented earlier. And so we're going to be working on that and asking our neighbors to help us do that. Yeah. I probably don't have time to go over this. I just wanted you to understand it is a very long process. There's lots of different steps. Okay. And the other major hydropower project in our watershed is the one owned by Yuba County Water Agency, and it was built in 1966 to 1971. And it is not as far along in the relicensing. It involves New Bullard's Bar Reservoir and the Narrows 2 powerhouse, which is right below Englebright Dam. But our objectives in this process are fish passage to the upper Yuba, to improve stream flows, enhance habitat, and improve recreational opportunities and public facilities at the river. This is Narrows 2 powerhouse, and that's Englebright Dam. And this water is coming below Englebright Dam. Englebright is an after bay for Colgate Powerhouse. It's a forebay for this one, but it is not part of the FERC license. So we have to deal with the Army Corps of Engineers directly when it comes to anything having to do with fish passage at Englebright. There is a lot of studies still going on of the interaction of salmon and with this powerhouse at this point below Englebright Dam. And what we are doing is looking at the results of studies and in the process of environmental analysis to negotiate for what the flows should be below project dams, particularly on the Middle Yuba River below our house dam, pictured here, to hopefully provide sediment as well as flow to the dams, to pass wood through the reservoirs to the reaches below the dams, and to improve recreational facilities. This photo shows the amount of wood that can be captured in New Bullard's Bar Reservoir and has been rafted up and burned. And so we're requesting that some of this wood be passed to the river channels below the dam, including to the lower Yuba River for the benefit of salmon and steelhead habitat. And as I already mentioned, fish passage at Englebright Dam is not officially on the negotiating table, but we continue to advocate for that in this forum and others. So dam relicensing is restoring our watershed, even if we haven't seen the actual outcomes manifested yet. We are getting there. And it's repairing the natural processes that our river depends on and improving we believe our community's connection with the river as we engage in this process. It's also critical to our efforts to restore salmon and steelhead in the Yuba. This is a collaborative forum with tremendous scientific resources. Millions of dollars have been spent on scientific studies of different river reaches through this process. Been very useful. Circle's part of a strong and expert coalition, and we have made comments on record many times through this process, and it's helping us to prepare and to advocate for a very large investment in the Yuba watershed yet to come. So I want to thank those of you who may have known some about this and I bored you, and those of you who haven't heard anything like this and maybe didn't quite get it all. So I tried to hit the middle. Thank you for your patience, and thanks for our help, everyone.